Hi, my name's Stefan Demers, and I'm a program manager in Nike Supply Chain focused on managing a portfolio of projects that work with business process automation. And what I'd like to talk to you today about is how there's an opportunity in the broader supply chain and automation story at Nike to start implementing both shared value and circular economic ideas while making sure that the business cases that we select to automate still focus on creating shareholder value. So I want to start by talking about some of Nike's goals. Nike's current goals from a corporate level are to double the speed that we bring product to market, double the innovation that we see integrated both in internal technology and the technology that touches the consumer, and double the amount of our sales that are direct to the consumer because that doubles our margin. At the same time, we have impact goals that include reducing our CO2 emissions by 25%, putting zero waste into landfills for our footwear manufacturing operations, and reducing the amount of water that we use by 20%. These goals right now are managed somewhat in isolation, but both of them are fundamental to the way that Nike is thinking about their future. When we talk about automating at Nike, I want to first talk about why we're even bothering to do it. So Nike's really working on automating because it's a way to decrease the transaction cost of every process we do, let us work faster by implementing consistent processes that are done in many cases purely by machine. And using machine learning and consistent processes, it lets us make better decisions. The impact of those overall is bringing more shareholder value to the folks that own Nike stock. There are already some stories at Nike where we've had significant success with automation. We're using automation right now to decide what kind of launch products to launch when during the year through machine learning algorithms. We're using machine learning to help identify what kind of cargo we should use air freight on, to make sure that we're using air freight very judiciously and very effectively. And this is having an impact of bringing CO2 out of our transportation supply chain, as well as driving down transportation costs. And we're using automation in our order flow. So using technologies from the time that a customer or a consumer places an order all the way through to when that product is received by that customer or consumer. And that's had real impacts on the speed that we can actually get product ordered and out into the marketplace. So automation has a track record here. But I think that there's something big that's still really missing from the story, tying that shareholder value piece back to circular economic and shared value concepts. What do I think is missing from the automation story? Fundamentally, I think automation poses a risk to cause more layoffs. And the impact of our last round of layoffs was significant poison to our culture. We went from being a place where people felt really certain about the work that they do and the future that they had at Nike, to seeing employee survey results that made it clear that there are a lot of people that no longer felt confident that they had a future here at Nike or the future of the company itself. And that makes it harder to train people, to get the best from people, and to retain people. We haven't thought about automation in terms of the community. There are a lot of people that love Nike, both in Portland and around the world, but there are a lot of people that haven't necessarily seen benefits from Nike and that may actually have a really negative perception of the company. And finally, it's the awareness that Nike has a huge footprint in the production of 1 billion units of footwear and apparel, and the result is 12 million metric tons of CO2 and 16.5 billion gallons of water being used, or liters of water being used in FY18 alone. So those are all parts that haven't really been part of a core part of the Nike automation story so far. And I want to talk about how we can bring them in. So the first piece is going to be understanding the components. Nike leadership needs to clearly tell the story, both internally and externally, that from now on, we look at value outside of business value when we talk about automation. There needs to be a way for employees who are doing the work and are near the process to be able to be engaged with defining the way automation is implemented. There needs to be measurements that make sure that the benefits that we talk about in our business cases are actually realized, both from a financial benefit and from an impact perspective. We're going to need a team of cross-functional experts who understand stakeholder relationships, creating job mapping, the technology of automation, and community impact to work as a team to be able to bring automation to life that's focused beyond the profit motive. And we're going to need to identify the partners that can help us move very, very quickly by bringing in best practices rather than have Nike invent the wheel from scratch. So with those components, how do we actually start activating? We really need leadership to tell the story of why shared value is important. We need them to introduce a core team who will actually be doing most of the heavy lifting in bringing this automation work to life. We need that core team to really get engaged with stakeholders and make them feel like they have skin in the game and something to win by helping to define automation at Nike. And we need to be able to go and identify the right partners as we find those automation opportunities to bring together technology, academia, and nonprofit groups who can all bring automation to life with solutions that have a positive effect. With those components in place, we're going to be ready to start into going and defining our first pilot. The pilot that I'd like to start with, because it's very, very tangible for a lot of employees and in terms of a financial perspective, as well as having a huge CO2 impact, is air travel. So my question is, what if Nike cut business air travel by 50%? It would represent a reduction of 37 million tons of CO2 emissions in 1 year, which is about 10% of Nike's overall CO2 emissions for transportation. There's a $400 million opportunity in cost savings. It would mean that for support staff, they could have a better experience. And then finally, really critically, for the folks that are out in their frequent flyers, there's a very adverse effect on their personal lives and an extremely negative effect on their health. So there's a lot of stakeholders that are part of this that have a lot to win from well-implemented travel. We're going to need some players involved. We're going to need to bring together our frequent flyers, the support staff who make the travel happen, our sustainability leads who understand the environmental impact, and our finance leads who can talk about the financial cost. With our cross-functional core team, a team of dev experts who can actually start bringing solutions and prototypes to life, and as appropriate, the right partners to be able to try some of those solutions out and work with us to be able to scale the approach. With that team together, what I would propose is that initially we work with those stakeholders and the core team to talk about what is the job that that travel at Nike does, and step out of the mindset of every time we need XYZ, we get on a plane, and start talking about what we really seek when Nike employees fly. Based on those outcomes, I'd be looking for the core team to identify some options. Maybe it's video conferencing, maybe it's better facilitation, maybe it's just really, really good software to coordinate to make sure that all the right people are together at the right time, so we need to fly less. Regardless of those, we need to get some creative options out there with the input of the stakeholders and the creativity of the core team. With those options established, we'll need to do some editing. Whether it's through Pube Matrix, through voice of the customer exercises, potentially through some rapid prototyping to be able to try some of these things out. We'll need to be able to go from a large quantity of viable ideas to a very select few, and finally one idea that will represent our pilot. And when we have that pilot, it'll be time to go and demonstrate the impact that pilot actually has, again, by working with our finance support and our sustainability support to be able to see the tangible results from that pilot. The pilot's really important because that's what helps us build the credibility for this approach. So with the pilot out and the measurements in, it'll be time to tell that story of that pilot, both in terms of a one-time outcome, but also tell the story about using voice of the customer and considerations of Nike's global impact and what was accomplished. That will get some momentum and some excitement around the tools that the pilot has proven. With some enthusiasm built around the pilot, it'll be time to take the tools and the methodologies from that pilot and operationalize them. This will mean building templates, formalizing approaches, and having that core team with a training support staff go out and start building enthusiasm and awareness and some additional expertise so that there can be more than one core team. And so that these are tools that people start understanding and using in the language that they have to talk about their project work. With more people educated, more people enthusiastic, and a track record to work from, the next step will actually be to begin integrating. And what I envision here is that folks from that initial core team and their colleagues that they have trained would start working on existing automation projects to see where there could be opportunities to bring in some of that shared value and circular economy mindset with a voice of the customer approach to start tying it into active automation work. Finally, with a broader understanding and with some integration of these tools and techniques, I believe that it'll be time to actually use the methodologies established to become part of the stage gate for the way that all future automation work is prioritized and executed. And I want to talk finally a little bit about what that would look like. In an end state, what I envision is that the values of waste reduction, community impact, employee experience, as well as revenue creation and cost reduction would be the drivers of all the business cases for new automation projects. And into this process, we would be looking for both market research-driven ideas, maybe something from Gartner, from our sustainability team, or as well as being able to have input from our frontline employees and our managers to bring together some creative ideas and start maturing them into business cases in an initial intake. I would be looking for that original core team along with some leadership governance to evaluate those ideas as they come in and start developing the business case with some additional market research to be able to identify what the best ideas and the biggest opportunities were that actually warranted execution. With a great business case identified, it'll be time for the core team assigned to that business case to go and start identifying the right stakeholders to connect with. They'll be working with those stakeholders to develop a job map and objectives that really describe the thing that automation will accomplish, not just talking about the way that the process is run today, but again, really thinking about the objectives that we're pursuing. Depending on those objectives, there will be an opportunity to engage with partners, potentially internal, potentially external, to make sure that Nike isn't starting from scratch in any of this innovation work. And if there are existing products or approaches on the market, or existing NGOs who are involved and interested in doing this work, that both Nike and that partner are benefiting to be able to move more quickly. With the partners engaged, the objective is clear, it'll be time to start developing the solution. And the solution doesn't necessarily need to be exactly as it always is, but there's going to be an opportunity here, especially for internal tools, to pilot quickly and get some real-time feedback. And based on those pilots, evaluate the outcome. Again, metrics are going to be really key to this because that's what will tell us whether the business case that we were originally pitched actually is manifesting in real tangible results. And based on what we're seeing from those outcomes, there will be a final decision to learn from those outcomes, learn from the way we executed the process, and make a decision to scale that pilot to a broader base, or potentially to pivot, as well as to refine the process itself so that the way that automation is implemented with shared value is always improving and it's always staying relevant and up to date. I genuinely believe that this is a way to make automation a win-win for both Nike and its core constituents, while still focusing on shareholder value. And I think that there's a real risk that if Nike doesn't bring in a broader perspective to the way that we automate, that we stand to lose and take a serious hit to our reputation. I really appreciate the time, and I appreciate you taking time to walk through this today. And I'm excited to hear your questions online. Thank you very much.